Hi, and welcome to another episode of SMECO Connects. I am Tom Dennison, and I am pleased to be joined by two individuals today who can help explain capital credits and what they are, how they work, how they're accrued. And I always explain to people, I work at SMECO, and well, what's SMECO? It's the local utility, and we're an electric cooperative. And what does that mean? Well, we're not an investor-owned utility, meaning that we're, publicly traded and those types of things. We're a not-for-profit organization. And when we have margins or what we, money that comes in over and above our expenses, because a co-op is not-for-profit and we're owned by the people we serve, capital credits are refunded to them, and that's all part of the co-op difference and the co-op model that we all live with here and work with at SMECO. So it is my pleasure to introduce Lynette Starke and Shannon Roecker. Lynette, if you could just introduce yourself, how long you've been at SMECO and kind of what's your job title and what you do.
Sure. My name is Lynette Starke, and I've been at SMECO for 36 years. I started in the billing department and then did a brief amount of time in the external affairs area and then came back to billing about 26 years ago and been there ever since.
Excellent. Shannon, how about you?
Hi, I'm Shannon Roecker. I've been with SMECO nearly 21 years. I started out in accounts payable, moved to capital credits, left to do budgeting for about 2 years, and then also returned to capital credits. And it is my passion.
Wonderful.
I enjoy it.
Well, I know I certainly rely on you when I get questions from people, and it's always great to be able to hand them off to people who are very much more knowledgeable than I am when it comes to certain issues. And I know enough to be dangerous, but I think it's really great to have two experts here who can kind of share with our viewers, what a capital credit is and how they're accrued. So which either one of you, Shannon, do you want to take this one? Like if you were to describe to somebody what is a capital credit and how they're accrued, how would you describe that?
So to start off, like as you said, we're not for profit. So on a given fiscal year, if we have revenue in excess of expenses, we have what we call a margin. A company that's for profit would call it profits. So margins, profits, kind of the same thing. But since we are a nonprofit, those margins get allocated back to our customers. That allocation is calculated based on each individual customer's usage of electricity and what they pay on their bill. Okay. And between that and then the amount of the margins, it's a percentage.
Gotcha.
Of the total for everybody.
And they accrue over time, is that correct?
And they accrue over time. We typically hold capital credits for years, and it's used to help fund any construction that we do, to maintain the power lines, for new buildings as needed or maintenance as needed, trucks, anything
the
that
operations of the cooperative.
Yeah, operations that
Right.
allows us to keep the power on.
Exactly. And so if you were, if just to put it in a real life scenario, so someone who has lived in, say, Charles County for 35 years and is a predominantly electric home, uses only electric for heating, cooling, whatever, obviously they're going to have more capital credits than someone who may live next door who's only been there for 5 years, moved from outside the service territory into SMECO service territory, and perhaps have propane heating or oil heating. They're not using as much electricity.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
the way
that
to
is.
analogize it?
It's directly related to each customer's usage. As you said, somebody that has oil heat versus electric heat versus somebody who has solar panels or
Excellent
or
point.
windmills. and maybe generating a portion of their own power, may not be paying as much for power.
Right.
So they wouldn't earn as much capital credits.
Excellent. So, Lynette, you've been here for 36 years, and you've seen I'm sure you've seen a lot of capital credit refunds that have gone out. I know we have a refund that's going to happen in July of this year.
Yes.
Explain to people what that means and kind of how they can see that impact in their July bills.
So it will begin on bills rendered on July 13th or later.
Okay.
And it will be 1.32% of the margins.
Okay.
And it'll be a line item. It'll be on the top of their bill where it's easy for them to see. And it will continue for a month after that. So every customer who had an active account with SMECO during 2025 will see a refund on their electric bill.
Excellent. And so that that percentage obviously will be the amount of credit on your bill will be reflective of how many years you've been a co-op member, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. So Shannon, what's that process like in getting ready for a refund that goes out? I mean, I'm sure that's a lot of work for you and your folks. So explain a little bit about that and why it's important.
It is. Each year we have margins. We can issue a general refund. It's board approved. Usually it's a percentage of the margins.
Right.
And each customer's, again, calculation of their refund is determined on their capital credit balance.
Right.
That's accrued from all the allocations that they've received over years, minus any refunds that they've had. So Lynette said 1.3%. So I'm going to go with easy numbers here. If you have a $100 balance, you would get $1.32
Excellent.
back as a credit on your bill.
Right.
With the general refund, if customers leave the service area and they still have a capital credit or equity balance, they're still eligible to receive general refunds, and they'll get, again, a percent of that balance. Their refund amount will be issued by a check instead of as a bill credit.
Because they may have moved to Pennsylvania
Correct.
or wherever,
Which
outside of the SMECO service territory.
Yes, which is why it's very important that when customers leave the service area, they give us their forwarding address so that we can get that check to them. After a general refund, about 3 years later, if those checks aren't cashed, we do a missing member publication which lists all the names only of the customers who have uncashed checks or otherwise unclaimed refunds, and we're trying to get a hold of them.
Sure.
Get them to contact us so that we can get those checks issued to them.
Yeah, so I think that's important to note for people is if they see the missing members publication, or I assume is that online as well?
It is online. It stays online year round.
Okay.
It's updated maybe every 6 months, maybe sometimes just once a year.
Yeah.
But 3 years after a refund, we actually do a physical publication. We distribute those to our offices. We've been sending them to the libraries around the different counties. The Register of Wills offices have them. We used to put them in the newspapers, but nobody gets a newspaper anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's always online.
Okay.
And if you Google your name, it'll pop up. Something else to think about is there's a lot of people with the same name.
Okay.
So if you see what you believe to be your name on that list and you send us the refund request form, we'll review it, and maybe it's not you. So we ask for some personal information,
Of course.
but we're just trying to make sure the right person gets that money.
Exactly.
And you have to have had SMECO service in your name to be eligible.
You got to be the account
for
holder.
that refund. The
Yeah.
account holder, yes.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I think people may not understand. I know just in our my personal situation, my wife moved to Southern Maryland before I did, and so the account has always been in her name, and so she's accruing capital credits, and obviously she would probably ask me about that, not calling you all, but anyway, I'll just leave that aside. But I think it's important for people to understand, if you're a SMECO member, SMECO customer, that you are entitled to capital credits based on how long you've been a SMECO member and how much electricity you've used. And we can't give the entire credit out at one time, right? Because
Correct.
it's funding the operations of the co-op, because we're a not-for-profit. Those revenues are used and reinvested into our system. And however, upon board approval, we can allocate a percentage of them. And one of the greatest examples of that is going to happen next month in July, or actually this month probably, when this podcast airs, whenever we do the general refund. So Lynette, back to you on the logistics of allocating the refunds. If people have questions about the refund, I guess they can just call our regular contact center. They can get information. They get routed to your teams to answer questions, that kind of thing.
Yes, we also do information sharing with the contact center prior to the refund, so that they're educated, because we always want it to be a one-stop shop
Right.
when they call. So the contact center does have basic information on capital credits and the refund process that they can usually answer most questions, and then the more detailed ones will be routed over to Shannon and her team.
Excellent. And Shannon, before the podcast, we talked about estates, those members who may have passed away, and walk us through that process and what the important things that you would like to point out to people.
So first of all, if you have a family member that has a SMECO account in their name and the service is active, please contact us to close that account and get service into whoever's going to be living there or paying the bill. Once that's done, it allows us to offer a final lump sum refund to the customer's estate. With that, in the past, it's been more common that the family members need to go to the courthouses to get court documents saying who their personal representative is.
Okay.
And for the most part, that's what we still get. But a few years ago, around 2021, we started offering customers the option to fill out a beneficiary designation form for capital credits. So all active customers and any former inactive customers who haven't already done so should go to our website, and there's a link under the capital credits page to submit a beneficiary designation. And what that does, if the customer designates someone, then we don't have to ask them for the court documents. We can issue the final refund of that person's capital credits to their beneficiary.
Excellent.
Instead of
Makes it a lot
having
easier.
the widow go to the courthouse to get a letter of administration. And that is something that's very exciting for the future, and for people to be able to not have to go to all that trouble.
Right.
To get those.
Trying to make it easier if
Yes.
possible in a
Yes.
difficult time. And I think it's also, this is a good segue to talk about if people can come to our customer service windows. We have customer service people at our office here in Hughesville and also in Leonardtown, open 7 days a week, normal business hours. So if people have capital credit questions, in addition to paying their bills, in addition to having a concern about service reliability, they can go to the window and ask, and then obviously they can always call or email us to try to get information.
Absolutely. They can go to the website. They follow the links for their account. And I think at the end of the podcast, we're going to provide a a web address for the website and the email, which is capital.credits@smeco.coop,
Perfect.
and they can email questions there as well.
That's great. That's a great point. And I think that's what the goal of this podcast has always been, is to, one, to stress the difference between an electric cooperative and an investor-owned electric utility. Not that one is better than the other. I mean, we're very partial to the co-op model, obviously, but it's important for people to understand that being a member means something more than just getting a bill every month. And I think that's an important distinction between an electric cooperative and an investor-owned utility, such as a Pepco, a BGE, a Delmarva Power and Light, et cetera. So when I try to talk to people in the community and through podcasts like this, it's important for people to understand that difference. And I just want to say personally, it's so nice to be able to work with two individuals like you, when people call and they may have a relationship with me or Sonja or whomever, and it may be a difficult time, and you all really treat people and walk them through this process very easily, because it is a benefit to them ultimately. So, Lynette or Shannon, was there anything we missed on capital credits you'd like to point out before we end?
No, just most importantly, if we have a lot of customers that are here on military assignment, for instance, that are only in the area for a short time, maybe a few years, and then they move to a new assignment. We have a lot of retirees that have lived here their whole life, and now they're relocating to warmer, drier climate. Please let us know what your forwarding address is, because we want to get the money that you're eligible for to you. The easiest way to do that, again, is either call in and provide your current mailing address to the contact center representatives, or you can go right to the website and there's a link there as well to update your mailing address, and the Capital Credits team gets that, and we update our records so that when we have the next general refund, that your check is getting mailed to the right place.
Wow. It's a great tip, and we're looking forward to getting those refunds out here in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
And it'll be a nice little present for people in the summertime here. So thank you both very much for all you do. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and really, really appreciate you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.